Tonight's video dives straight into the moment that resets every relationship rule in Fairmont Crest, the hospital lot shock where Eva drags Tomas into obstetrics with 2 tests, 2 lines, and a future that suddenly feels like a trapdoor. We'll rewind the choices that led to this door sliding open, track the quiet math on the ultrasound screen, and follow the tiny discrepancies that turn joy into suspicion. Dates that don't align, messages from a number no one wants to name, and a circle on the printout that could mean complication or conspiracy. By the end, we'll map how a single scan can detonate trust across Kat, Chelsea, and anyone orbiting Lakeview's dim corridors. If you love high-stakes soap psychology secrets, timelines, and the cruel clarity of medical data, stick with me. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and let's pull apart this pregnancy twist to see whether it's a miracle, a miscalculation, or the start of a fall no one is ready to survive. The morning begins like a staged confession with no priest in sight, asphalt shimmering in the hospital lot and the air humming with the low drone of engines that never quite cut out. Eva grips Tomas by the wrist and drags him across painted arrows and oil stains toward the sliding doors of obstetrics, the breath in her chest moving too fast for the day to catch. 2 tests, 2 lines, a verdict that feels both irrevocable and strangely fragile, and Tomas freezes only long enough for the news to rearrange every room in his head. Then instinct takes command. He signs her in, pushes for an early ultrasound, adds blood work, asks for a physician on call, and in that efficiency hides the quake under his ribs. Inside the fluorescent quiet, Eva answers the routine questions with a composure that keeps slipping, the kind of poise that looks like glass on a moving truck, always one bump away from disaster. When the nurse asks about dates, Eva updates them with a tiny adjustment that glances off the truth by the thickness of a fingernail but echoes like a drop tray. Tomas registers it, stores it, keeps his face calm, and carries the file like it's an unexploded device. The past tiptoes into the room and the white hiss of the gel bottle and the soft mechanical whir of a machine warming up. A faint sack, a promise inside a grainy night sky, floats onto the monitor. The doctor's tone is gentle, the measurements clinical, the math impersonal and merciless. If the data's what Eva said, there should be a clearer constellation by now. If not, there is a window, a plausible drift, a margin that could cover hope or conceal a lie. Tomas doesn't blink, but his memory rewinds without asking permission, cutting back to a week of blurred choices, a celebration that collapsed into the kind of late night that keeps its own counsel. A private storm named Lakeview where lights were bright and tapes allegedly slept. The present continues its procession. Paper prints fold like pale feathers into the file. A lab requisition slides across the counter. The phone in Eva's bag shivers with a message that she doesn't read in full before killing the screen, as if making the message dark can starve it of oxygen. Tomas, who trusted ease and routine when the future felt endless, now trusts data. He asks for more tests, more clarity, a grid of certainty for a life that refuses to be graphed. Eva says later without saying the word, and her hand trembles just enough for him to see the shape of the trouble crouched behind her eyes. He is not a jealous man so much as a man allergic to chaos, and this, he realizes, is chaos with a heartbeat. On the walk back through echoing corridors, they pass a poster of smiling parents cradling a swaddled promise. The copy is neat and wholesome and cruel in its optimism. In the reflection of the elevator's steel, Tomas studies the angle of Eva's jaw, the shadow at her temple, the way her shoulders resist the comfort he offers. A quiet war has already started, his need for proof versus her need for control. Outside, the sun hits hard as if trying to cauterize everything. Chelsea crosses their path with a question in her eyes and concern dressed as small talk in her posture. Eva's file slides a half-inch in her grip, a printout slips to the concrete. Tomas bends, retrieves it, and in the blink before he folds it shut again, an abbreviation and a number draw a thin line under the morning. The measurement is smaller than the statement. The statement larger than the measurement, and between the two there is a tension that looks a lot like a fuse. He suggests food in that way that means surveillance without handcuffs. Eva nods, because refusing kindness would make a different kind of trouble, and they move toward the car, 2 silhouettes on the edge of a decision neither is brave enough to name. The meal is quiet and strategic. Tomas orders what Eva once claimed she hated, half-testing symptoms, half-mapping truth. Naja arrives on cue like an actor with impeccable timing. He files that away, too. He mentions a specialist, a harmless referral with knives in the lining, and smiles the way people smile when they wish this were simpler. Eva excuses herself, photographs the ultrasound in a bathroom mirror for reasons that make her shoulder blades tighten, and returns to find Tomas staring out the window at a family holding balloons, the kind of hopeful scene that floats like a dare in the middle of terrible decisions. Somewhere beneath the town, a rumor engine grinds awake. Somewhere above it, a single cloud halts as if not wanting to witness what comes next. And in the space between, a plan begins to look back at them, unblinking. The plan is simple: keep moving forward, keep eyes open, keep history shallow. But history isn't shallow here. It pulls under floorboards and creeps up through hairline cracks. Lakeview flickers again behind Tomas's eyes, music too loud, a corridor with a camera that might have been dead or merely sleeping, a door that closed on a truth no one meant to create. He calls the hospital under the pretense of confirming insurance. He adds a panel, a number, a test that can tell the difference between fear and fact, and hangs up with guilt he chooses not to examine. Eva stares at her hands, pressing fingerprints into the soft margin of the printout, as if she could imprint a better story onto the paper. When they part, it isn't relief. It's a truce with a stop-time expiration, a handshake with a phantom. Tomas waits for her car to vanish, then photographs the measurement and sends it to a friend who knows exactly how much truth lives inside a millimeter. The reply does not arrive yet, and the silence is a verdict of its own. As evening leans in, Eva pins the black and silver image to her mirror at home and watches her face float beside it, two superimposed futures competing for the same space. Across town, a phone lights a dark desk and an unnamed contact drafts a new message with a threat that pretends to be advice. The first domino is upright but trembling. The episode will not give it mercy. Night lays a sheet over Fairmont Crest, but light leaks at the edges, and that is where the trouble grows. The lab processes glass tubes that remember the warmth of Eva's arm. The machine hums like a patient predator. In another room, a technician marks a sonographic detail with a small circle, not an alarm but not a comfort, and files it without knowing the circle will redraw 2 lives. Tomas sits with a drink he does not taste, building timelines in his head like scaffolding around a building on fire. The days do not align perfectly. The window is plausible, yes, but plausibility is not the same as peace. His phone finally peals with a benign vibration that hurts anyway. The message is clinical and unsentimental, the language of numbers and ranges. There is a drift, it says without saying it, a degree of uncertainty that might be ordinary and might be meaningful. The human brain cannot live forever in that gray. It begins to manufacture images to fill the fog, and the fog, resentful, thickens. He thinks of Kat without speaking her name, of what this information would do if she learned it too soon and too publicly, of the way a single whisper in this town can become thunder in an hour. That thought drives him into movement. He begins to pick threads, a receipt, a gap in a calendar, a memory with too many reflections. Lakeview returns, not as nostalgia but as a crime scene with no police tape, and he calls in a favor that costs a piece of himself to pay. A clip appears, truncated and blurry, not immediately damning but rich with suggestion, a corridor, a cap brim throwing a shadow over a jawline, a hand on a door. The sight carves a notch in him. He knows how misleading half-images can be, but he also knows how painfully often the worst interpretation sits closest to the truth. Across the same night, Eva rehearses sentences that sound righteous and reasonable until they strike the mirror and come back altered. She starts to catalog outcomes the way accountants count debts. If the math resolves in her favor, she keeps a future. If it resolves against her, she keeps a different kind of future built from ash and apology. Neither feels kind. The phone breaks the room again with a second message from the same number that used to be comfort and is now gravity. Don't announce anything yet, it insists in subtext. There are reasons you know to respect. The word reasons becomes a chorus she cannot shut off. She closes her eyes and sees hospital flooring expanding like an ocean, hears the gel bottles hiss like a fuse, feels Tomas's steadiness as something that might save her or destroy her. By morning the town has dressed itself for a community event with too many cameras and too little charity. People here love justice until the day it costs them someone they wanted to love more. Eva arrives with a posture that imitates calm, a hand on her abdomen only when no one watches. Tomas arrives bereft of flamboyance, eyes constantly tracking exits and angles. Chelsea notices the micro-avoidances, the way trajectories bend to avoid collision with truth. The day plays along until it cannot. A physician leaves a voicemail with the blue light of the hospital in his voice, carefully outlining next steps as if arranging flowers in a war zone. Follow-up, better imaging, differential possibilities, words that begin clinically and end like weather warnings. The sound of it turns Eva's ribs into bars. She swallows a planet of air and it does not help. The horizon narrows to hallway and chair and program and faces that do not know they are about to be conscripted into a different story. TOMAS listens to the same message seconds later and treats it like a mission briefing. He makes a choice that will read as control to some and as care to others. He books the appointment himself, sets the time, builds a structure. It will hold them or it will not. Between the calls, a separate message slides through the cracks to him, meaner and more exacting. If he wants to stop spiraling, he should ask about the night everyone pretends to have forgotten. The small private party with music turned up to erase memory and doors that close on mistakes too important to vanish. The word party sounds obscene to him now. He tightens his tie and swallows the reflex to confront. Confrontations in public become content, content becomes damage you cannot unpublish. The event continues until the precise moment it doesn't. A sudden press of bodies pushes rumors through the crowd with the speed of loose electricity. And a single glance lands where it should not, linking an older affection to a newer consequence. Eva's balance seesaws, her breath shortens and her vision rims with static. Chelsea moves, human before she is cousin, but rescue makes sound, and sound makes notice, and notice becomes spectacle. TOMAS is there fast, not to own her but to shield the edges, to make a circle of privacy no one is allowed to pierce. It almost works. It doesn't. The image on her phone, black and silver, the small arc inside a larger shadow, feels like both shield and spear. She wants to protect it and throw it away, to claim it and deny it. The doctor's circle in the corner of the frame stares back like an eye with bad news. When the crowd thins, after kindnesses that hurt more than cruelty, they sit with the world finally quiet enough to hear the sound of vows they have not made and trust that never learned how to walk. He does what he does best, makes a plan, turns fear into appointments and questions and thresholds. She does what she has learned to do, moves through the plan like a dancer pacing off a stage, whispering to herself the ruthless mantra of survival that made sense before any of this had a pulse. Night arrives again, and with it the lab results that refuse to fully pick a side. Numbers in range but not definitive, ratios that tease rather than settle, guidance that insists on patience no one has left to spend. The second ultrasound is scheduled, the one that may turn rhythm into proof or ambiguity into a different kind of alarm. Before sleep, TOMAS stares at a ceiling that suddenly feels too low, and decides he cannot tell Kat until he has something that will not collapse under a stare. He hates the secrecy, he hates lying by omission, he hates that the alternative would be worse. On a different side of town, Eva sits on the bathroom floor with her back to the cold tub and the ultrasound pinned above the sink like a souvenir from a country that might not exist. She counts this as punishment without knowing what for. The phone buzzes one last time, a clipped warning dressed as loyalty, and she lets it die without opening it, because every word at this point is a blade. The episode ends the only way it can when truth is a moving target, with silence that sounds like accusation, with a plan that knows it may be treachery, with two people who wanted a simple life staring down a hallway that keeps lengthening. The future does not wait for them to decide. It arrives on a schedule printed in black ink, backed by machines that do not care who gets saved and who gets ruined. And when the lights finally go black, the only thing certain is the next scan's cold room and the way despair teaches even the strongest to hold still while it chooses a place to land. And that's where we leave them tonight, two people standing on opposite banks of the same river, watching the current carry an ultrasound image toward a future none of them can fully claim. The parking lot shock has done its work, dates don't quite reconcile, the circle on the printout stares back like an eye that knows more than anyone is ready to say, and a nameless number keeps slipping warnings into Eva's pocket like stones. TOMAS has converted panic into logistics, follow-ups, panels, an appointment that promises to turn ambiguity into outcome, yet even the cleanest plan can't disinfect out. Eva, meanwhile, is measuring the cost of every path, announce and risk a public collapse, delay and feed suspicions, or step into the second scan and accept that the machine will choose a truth on her behalf. Around them, the collateral is already lining up. Kat's faith, Chelsea's conscience, the Lakeview footage that may or may not exist, and the town's appetite for justice when justice doubles as entertainment. This is the paradox Fairmont Crest does best, a heartbeat framed by hard math, intimacy haunted by surveillance, love forced to live on a diet of probabilities. So here's the question I'll leave you with: when the next image lands, clearer, louder, impossible to spin, does it save this couple or simply tell them exactly how to break? Drop your read on the timeline in the comments. Is the drift ordinary biology or the shadow of another night? Should Tomas keep building the scaffold of proof, or is there a point where proof becomes its own betrayal? If this breakdown made your pulse spike, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss part 2, where we unpack the second ultrasound, the doctor's call, and the chain reaction at the community event that could turn a private question into a public verdict. Until then, hold on to your compassion and keep your theories ruthless, because in this town, the truth doesn't set anyone free unless it's the truth they can live with.